Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today is Monday, January 31st, 2022, the last day of the month. I am Solid Blue Sister, and this is My Turn to Talk. Welcome, Bahram. You are number one. And Frankie, you are number two. Bahram, I am well. Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to get started. All right. Frankie, you're going to have to work a little bit harder because Bahram, he is beating you. He's beating you the first one on. Welcome, Petty Deb. Welcome, sis. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Okay, so today I want to talk about use your past as fuel, how your childhood can enable your adulthood. And should your past be your fuel for the future? In other words, can your past propel you to do great things or destructive things in the future? How can your past or childhood enable or disable your adulthood? Welcome, GP Man. So, growing up, I would say that I had a pretty good childhood. I grew up with in a two-parent household, and I've said this to some people up until 2018 when my father passed away. My parents had been married for 60 years. But I also grew up with a complicated mother. But my sister and I, we didn't want for anything. We had, for the most part, a good childhood. And then you see people who don't have, their childhood may not be, so nice, but that is a relative word. What is a good childhood? What is bad? That is a relative term. You can have two people who grew up in the same household. Some people could say a perfect household. One person goes left, the other person goes right. You can have, two people who grew up in a household that is not so nice. Again, one person goes left, the other person goes right. So this is where I say, use your past as fuel. Can whatever is going on in your childhood or whatever happened in your childhood, can you use that in a way to where you do great things? And when I say great things, I don't mean that you have to be president or prime minister or you end up finding a cure for cancer or anything like that. But when I say do great things, I mean just you grow up to be just a decent person. And if you're a decent person, to me, that right there is something great. But again, that is my own personal opinion. So having said all that, I'm going to open it up, send out some invites if you guys want to jump on. If not, as always, you are more than welcome to just sit back and listen. Okay. Okay, so while I'm waiting for if anybody wants to come on, I also have a question for you. What is the difference between a Bahram? Let's see, it says you're connected, but I'm not seeing you on. So hold on, let me send out. I don't see you on my panel here. Bahram, can you go out and come back in?
Can you hear me?
Now I hear you. Okay, good. Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
So welcome, my friend. So what do you have to say?
So this topic is right up my street. I was so excited to see the topic headline when I had a look earlier today, and I think we did touch upon it on the last show. Was it when we talked a little bit about the Stainer? The Stephen Stainer, Reiki Stainer,
Right.
where and I wondered if that was where you got your inspiration for the topic tonight. But yeah, without repeating myself too much, and I'm really excited to hear what once people start to join in the comments as well. I really am passionate about this subject because I believe that our upbringing and also our subconscious, which is related and affects each other, is the driving force for all of our decisions, or a very big percentage of our decisions in adulthood, and it shapes us as people. Um, I think the only way of combating that is by, in my experience, because I've done it and I'm obviously still fighting those bad habits and things that I picked up from, I wouldn't say I had a bad childhood, but let's just say if I had not had my grandparents there for like moral guidance, and I was pretty much all of my life up until the age of probably 13, 14, 15, I spent every weekend I could down at my grandparents' house, where I was spoilt. But not only that, it was, they sat down and did homework with me, and they taught me better morals than I would have got if I'd, spent more time at home. And in later life, I realized that these habits, I had picked up from my mother, who's not a bad person at all, but has bad habits. And it also, from things that I saw in my childhood, shaped me into a person that wasn't the best type of person. Not that I was, it was more like um, self, like not confident at all, not outspoken. Like, there's these traits. And I went on a journey of what's it called when you, well, I listened to philosophy for a couple of years, and it was like self-improvement, better yourself, and I learned a lot through that, and now I'm, a lot better person in my view. So yeah, I'll leave it at that if you want to come back in or whatever.
Okay. All right. Well, first, this topic, I've actually had this topic for about 2 months. And I have so many topics that when I'm going through trying to choose which topic I'm trying to do, I'm like, oh, I'll do that one next time. And this one has just been one that has just been pushed back further and further. And I finally decided to do it. But so let me ask this. Do you think that if you are in a household, and not just your parents, but your siblings also, that you can subconsciously choose to want to be like a sibling or a parent, meaning the parents may be the ones who are, telling you don't do this, don't do that, or, they may smoke and you may pick up the habit of, smoking. Do you think that? Thank you, Feisty. Do you think that you can choose to subconsciously want to be like a brother or a sister as opposed to your parents? And I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, yeah. But you said choose subconsciously. I don't know if they are. Maybe you didn't mean to, but I think that is all contradicting points, because I think your subconscious takes over, and you just automatically do it to a certain degree. But there are correlations to our behavior where, and I'm not the best at all of them in explaining what that type of person does. The best way I can describe it, actually, if you've watched Friends, the sitcom, the American sitcom, there's an episode with a guy who, I think he's dating Phoebe, and he comes into the group, and he starts psychoanalyzing them all, and they'll say something or do something. He'll say, you have daddy issues, and they're like, what? And they're like, how did you know that? And it's like these kind of traits that we pick up in our childhood shapes us in that way. And maybe like having an older sibling, the younger sibling is maybe more likely to fight for the attention and then become a different type of person because of that. They've maybe dealt with that all their lives, and they've brought it into their adult, lives and their relationships with their loved ones or co-workers. It will definitely change them. To what degree is all very subjective. Not everyone follows these traits, but I think it's a huge, where it people can actually sit down and basically ask them what kind of childhood they had, whether it was a single mother, single father, um, if the mother and father had different relationships and things, and they'll be able to tell you what type of person you are, and I strongly believe in that.
Okay, all right. Formal welcomes out to Feisty One and the Only Crazy Lady. When I said subconsciously, I did mean to use that word because as we do things, no matter what we're doing, if we're at work or whatever, again, do we subconsciously, you know, not necessarily, not necessarily pick up habits of other people, but we're subconsciously kind of, somebody starts to uh, wear this is just an example. It's probably a bad one. Someone starts to wear a scarf at work because they're cold. Um, and you've never been cold, but you see this person come every single day. They have this scarf around their neck, and then one day you start wearing a scarf, and you're convincing yourself that you're cold. So again, if you're growing up in a household and you see, everyone has a different personality. Everyone is doing different things, especially if you grow up in a large household with a lot of people. Again, I use that word subconsciously. Are you subconsciously picking up the habits of other people? Like I say, if a parent smoke, if a parent, drinks or something, is that something that you're going to start doing because you saw your parents do it? I mean, I smoked for 10 years. My parents never smoked. I did not grow up in a household with people who smoked, but yet I did, and so that's what I mean by the subconscious. And um, can the things that we do when we're younger um, affect how we become when we're an adult?
Yeah, yeah. The two examples that pop into my mind from my own experiences. Um, my mother was never good at telling stories, and they would be long and drawn stories that she would take about 5-10 minutes to tell a story that the regular person could take 30 seconds. And I kind of picked up that habit, and I used to notice that people would switch off and look away, or just blatantly interrupt, and I thought it was quite rude. And I used to think to myself, wow, I'm just like my mum in that regards. And I need to get better at that, and I still do it to this day. I'm maybe even doing it now. But the other one is the smoking one. That one rang a bell as well, because my mother smoked, and I've never smoked in my life, and I detest smoking. So it can work in two ways. People, kids can pick up bad habits from their parents, and they can also be repelled by things. Another example is like, I see a lot of hatred for religion in the youth today, and even my age group and things. And I often ask, why? Why do you hate like Jesus, the Bible, and all these like? And you'll find a lot of the stories are that they were maybe forced to go to Sunday school or forced to go to church with their parents and put on dresses and fancy clothes, and as a kid that must be horrible. But it's like it's came with them into adult life, and now they have an irrational hatred for religion, because probably somewhere in their mind they've just got that nagging hatred because of those times. And it's not the fact that they hate it because they've most probably never looked into religion, but they just hate it because of that experience. And yeah, I thought that was another example to throw in. And yeah.
Well, let me ask this. I'm sorry I'm directing all the questions at you because no one else wants to come on. But you know, when you say, I want to talk about the difference between a happy childhood and a not so happy childhood or an unhappy childhood. And I think that is a relative term. So, what some people may think is happy, other may think that that was an unhappy childhood. If you're growing up poor and, your parents could only afford, just the bare minimum, you may think that, every Sunday that you all just had a little bit of meat, with your food. That could have been one of the best things ever. And that's a good memory that you have. So happy and unhappy is, in my opinion, is a relative term. So my question to you, Bahram, is what do you consider a happy childhood or an unhappy childhood? And is that a fair question?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one to answer, though. I think it all depends on the people, because I've certainly known people that have had zero money, growing up. Their family was maybe poor, but they had the happiest of childhoods. And then people with lots of money maybe had, not so good a childhood. Um, that's the only thing that's going in my mind just now. I think I would be more inclined to talk about what the ideal childhood would be for a better life, if there was such a thing. But if it's all mind over matter in that regards to happy or not. I don't know if I've done a good enough.
All right. Well, what do you consider an ideal childhood?
Um, I think for any child, a two-parent. This is maybe where we'll get into dangerous territory, but I believe that every child needs a mother figure and a father figure for the best of upbringing. I think the mother for the first, 15 years of the life is very important, all throughout the life, but more so important for the nurturing through the early years, and then the father figure to take over and, talk, when they are getting introduced into the big, wide, scary world, that's where the father, takes over. But again, it's subjective, because we've seen, and I'm, I put myself in that bracket with, I was brought up with a consistent mother, obviously, but different father figures. And 90, well, I mean, the father figures that I had weren't really father figures. The relationship between me and them wasn't the best, and that's why I always spent my weekends down at my grandparents. So, and I feel like I've turned out well. There are flaws that can be with a single mother child. They would probably end up being what we would call a white knight, where they defend women at all cost and can become a bit feminine, which subjective again. But then the opposite can be if you have a single father. I'm just leveling things out here. If it's a single father and he is, what's the word? Toxic masculinity. There are men who are over masculine, and that wouldn't have good results either. So there are all different types, but ideally, I think that you need a mother father. That's just my opinion.
Bahram, it's interesting that you said the thing with the single parent, because this is just something that just popped in my head and I never thought of. A lot of people in society, for whatever reason, they frown upon single parents, especially single mothers. And even though I've never been a single parent, I was not raised in a single parent household. I do recognize that single parents, be it men or women, is hard. It is hard. They're trying to do the job of two parents, and it's hard. However, from, one thing that when I think about it, and I just really thought about it now, I think if you're in a two parent household, you're still a single parent. And and I say that because I would say to my son, am I the only parent in this house? because he went constantly, mom, 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 mom. And I'm like, is there not another parent in this house? Am I the only one? And when children are little, they rely mostly on their mothers. And a lot of times, a lot of men, they kind of take a step back. And even when they get older and the father may start to get involved more because either if it's a boy, maybe they're playing sports or whatever, but it's still the mother. And when a child gets older, they still say my mom's, my mom's is the one, that I have to give credit to for doing this and doing that, whatever, and is rarely the father. So is it, and I may get myself in trouble for saying this, but is it fair to say that even if you're brought up in a two-parent household, you're still brought up with a single parent because the mom is always still the one who is taking the majority of the responsibility, whether it be financial or emotional. And emotional responsibility for a child, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, again, I totally get what you mean. Fathers are seeming, a lot. It's a stereotypical thing. I think it's that fathers kind of take a back step and let the mum do the raising the early years and then like you said. But what I was going to say, I don't know if I'm not changing the subject totally, but it's like I just needed to add in there that broken relationships, they can do damage as well. The old saying about don't just stay together for the kids' sake. It can also do more harm than good. If they're seeing parents arguing all the time or not in love. I think seeing your mum and dad in love and in a healthy relationship will only stand you in good stead going forward. But yeah, I think the mum definitely, nurtures the kid throughout its early years, and that's how it's supposed to be anyway, or not supposed to be, but that's how it's ended up through probably societal things. I think it's, it's yeah. I'm kind of struggling now.
Okay, all right. Well, a recent, and this is something that I am reading. As of 2019, a recent study by the American Psychological Association found that people who have fond memories of childhood, specifically their relationships with their parents, tend to have better health, less depression, and fewer chronic illnesses as older adults. So, again, does anyone want? I don't want to put all the burden on Bahram. If anyone else wants to join in, please join in. But I do want to ask Bahram, what do you think about that? And Feisty One says children need to see parents positively engage with each other, and I do agree with that. So, Bahram, back to you. What do you think about that study?
What was I going to say quickly one more time? I was reading Feisty One's comments there when you said it. Chronic, what was it?
Um, Specifically, their relationships with their parents tend to have better health, less depression, and fewer chronic illnesses as older adults. And those are children who have fond memories of childhood.
Oh, gee, that's. I mean, that's good to know. But I can't see the correlation, but it sounds. I mean, it sounds good enough. So if they have good relationships with their parents, they're less likely to have chronic illness and things. That is.
See, I don't know if
I
I
mean,
necessarily agree with that. I mean, because a chronic illness, I mean, to me, again, does that come into a psychological thing? When you say chronic, I
yeah.
mean, again, that is relative. What do you mean by chronic? A chronic could be you're an alcoholic. A chronic could be, you're a drug addict. That could be a chronic illness, or you can have cancer. I mean, that's something that everyone can possibly get. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that part.
No, and the more I think about it, the more I understand. But I mean, how the numbers maybe aren't a lot. Maybe it's just a small study they took. I don't know, because the way I think of it is, you hear of a lot of people battling with inner demons because of relationship breakdowns with parents, or maybe something that happened in their childhood, or something, or they've maybe had a falling out with a parent and there's unresolved issues or things that needed to have been said, and that can eat away at your psyche, your mind, and all that. So I think, I'm just likening it to the stuff that I research and things, and how fear can affect your immune system. And maybe that's got a correlation there, that if you're living with these regrets and things throughout your life from a young age, even, it might take its toll on your health, your mind health, your health overall. But it would be interesting to see how many people they studied, or what the poll was done, or you know.
Okay, well, last week we were talking about Carrie Stainer and Steven Stainer, and what happened to them. Now, you said, I can't remember if it was you or if it was somebody else. You've researched Jeffrey Dahmer. Was that you?
No, that was the one I was going to do. My wife and I listened to about an hour of a podcast on him just on a road trip one day, and he's the one that, if I'm going to do a podcast episode on, I'll start with him. His story sounds horrible, but intriguing all the same.
But let's look at someone like Jeffrey Dahmer. Um, you know, Considering what when he was little, he used to hurt animals, and what have you. And then he grows up and he starts to molest boys, and he kills them and he keeps their body parts in his refrigerator, what have you. So again, do you see his childhood have anything to do with how he became an adult, or do you think that he was just born bad? Because I do believe that people are born bad. I mean, that's just something that I think. And what do you think, or how do you think it could have turned him? What in his childhood, or what do you think could have happened that could have turned him around where he wasn't doing the things that he did?
Yeah, I think that was the comment that I thought that this show topic was about, when I mentioned that when I listened to that podcast, and I remember turning to my wife and saying, I can guarantee you, after hearing the intro and the broad story of this guy, Jeffrey Dahmer, I turned and said to my wife, I can guarantee you his childhood was traumatic, and his parents, he was either in a single parent or whatever, or there was abuse or something. And within the first 10-15 minutes, we learned that I think the mother was bedridden, and the father was very abusive to her. If I remember rightly, he used to hit her and throw things over her and things. And Jeffrey saw all that. And again, just to point out, I've seen abuse, and I don't keep people in my refrigerator. so it's not everyone that turns that way, but there are things that happen when you look at some of these people. There are commonalities between them all, and in regards to what you said, are people born bad? Yeah, I do think that as well. I think there are complications in birth, and genetics and things that can, and brain trauma throughout birth can all add to that as well. Again, I'm no expert, but I do believe there is things that can, you can give birth to people who are just never going to make it, or just going to, be evil to the core.
Okay. So, first of all, let me give a formal welcome. Michael Key, Quasi Timer, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, and welcome, Sava. So again, when you have the Dahmers and the Carrie Stainers and all these other people who become serial killers, but they're also living in a household with even if you were living in a household that wasn't so nice, um, some of these people still have siblings that grew up and they went in the opposite direction. They weren't the serial killers. They just went on either get married or, become a teacher, whatever. They went on and they live a quote unquote normal life. And then again, that is also relative because what is normal these days, you know? So once again, it's like, yes, Jeffrey Dahmer, he had two parents who didn't pay much attention to him. His father was always away, and you are right. His mother was bedridden, dealt with depression. I mean, she had a lot of issues on her own. And Saba says, I think those people were born with the sturdy foundation, biologically. Okay, all right. So again, you're in this household, and again, I ask, why do some people go right, the other people go left? Why do some people go up, the other people go down? I mean, you know, again, we're in the same house, so why does that one person become the bad seed, so to speak?
Yeah. The only thing I was thinking there as you were talking was if there's a big gap between the ages of the two siblings. I think these are the type of things I'm going to have to, when I do start doing true crime, your Dahmers and your Wayne Gacy's, your Ted Bundys, if I can see where if they have brothers and sisters that were in that same childhood and they had a decent life, they went on and had good lives, that does throw a spanner in the works to that theory a little bit. But at the same time as well, I've noticed this on my own accord before I even got into any of this way of thinking, that like I've noticed that the younger sibling of whatever, if it's 2, 3, or 4, whatever, is usually the more boisterous one. Certainly, I've got a younger sister, and she was like the very bold, boisterous, and I was the timid, shy, and certainly with my wife, her younger sister is the very bold, boisterous one, and she's like me, and I just it's something that stuck with me throughout. So there's a trait there that maybe someone else better than me can explain why that is. But the only way I can think of it is that the older one has had some alone time with the mother and father, more likely, and has had more attention, has been nourished more, and when the young one comes along, they're maybe feeling as if they're having to fight for attention, or the older one's the special one, and there's some deep, I mean, for a child it seems a bit strong, but those feelings end up, as when I was little and you used to get in trouble for doing something wrong, you used to go, oh, I'm going to pack my bags and run away. So these kind of feelings can maybe manifest and get stronger, and maybe something can just click in them. That combined with what we mentioned earlier about having genetics and evil in you, which is yet to be confirmed. I'm not sold on that. I'm just saying that I can quite believe that there are some humans that are born that have genetic defects, or whatever the word may be, that was always going to happen. I think it's a mixture of both.
All right. I'm going to read what Saba said. She says, my theory is pain. If there is a physical birth defect, it can domino into many different, not those two areas of one's existence, such as mental health. Okay. And let's see. Okay. So, again, welcome Shy Lady, and welcome Eric Green, and Crazy Lady, welcome back. So again, let me ask this, because we've been talking a lot about people who are on the quote unquote bad end of the spectrum. Um, what about those people who become CEOs. They become presidents of the U.S. Prime ministers, um, people who become directors of major corporations. And then again, you have that same. You're in this household, and become this, but you have that brother or sister who you're president or you're a senator, but your brother and sister, they just work at a market, or they're a kindergarten teacher. you know does that you know why is that one person, they aspire to be way up here? And I'm not saying, and please do not take this the wrong way, I'm just trying to compare. But yet, you're like, okay, you want to be president, go ahead. I'm happy being a kindergarten teacher. I'm happy working at the local grocery store, whatever. Why does it seem like that we have some people in the same family, with the same, grew up around the same parents, same grandparents, whatever? Some are doing one thing, and others choose to just kind of keep a low profile. And I hope I did not offend anyone, because that was not my intention.
Okay. No, when you were talking about people that are in power and CEOs and presidents and prime ministers, that takes a special trait and a special upbringing. And it's often said that some of these people have their vices and they have their demons, to live that type of lifestyle, and, pressure and things that they've maybe, again, I'm not an expert and I don't know what these traits are. Some say it's only childs can be good for that, because they've maybe had a lot of attention and a lot of focus on them and things. But I don't know. I think personalities, we're all different personality. Even brothers and sisters can be totally different. Why that is maybe, I think, what about IQ? I mean, I'm just throwing things out there now, but like, we're born with different IQs. Is that something that can change drastically? I don't know. I think you can change a couple of points here or there, but I was very good at school and my sister wasn't so good. So maybe that plays a part. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out.
Okay, Shy Lady, I see that you're once again. There you are. For whatever, I'm having this lag to today where people are not popping up. Welcome, Shy Lady. Do you want to add anything? And I'm pretty sure Bahram is happy you're here.
Hey everybody, hey Bahram. Yeah, I can add something. I agree with Bahram. It all depends on personalities, because you can be in the same family and be totally different. You could be the oldest child and you have a lot of pressure on you you might have like 3 or 4 siblings under you, and you may be that person who the parent relied on a lot to be the leader. So you may grow up, it could go either way. You may grow up to be a CEO or a VP or something. And then the younger ones may not aspire to that because they didn't have the same type of pressure to be something or to tend to be that leader. So it depends on the personality. And I'll never forget when my children were really little, my husband used to travel a lot. And it was a story he told me. It was a true story. It wasn't made up. It was like in the early 2000s, maybe around 2003 or 4. And I remember at that time, you didn't have Ubers like you have now. It was not that popular. He shared a car from the airport with another man. And this guy that he shared the car with, they had left the airport. He said to him, my husband's in sales. He talks a lot. So he asked the gentleman that was sitting in the car with him, what are your plans for the holidays? This was around Thanksgiving. He said, "Oh, I'm going to visit my brother and his family for the holidays, for Thanksgiving." And my husband said, "Why is that? Why aren't you spending time with your own family?" And he said to him, "I haven't spent time with my kids in probably the last 15 years." He said, "They don't want anything to do with me." And he said, "I have given my kids everything they ever wanted, cars, whatever. I've given them everything." He was some type of big time CEO, executive of some company. He was pretty big time. And he told my husband that his brother was just an auto mechanic. And his brother had, I think, 3 or 4 kids, had grandkids. And he said he wished that he could have had a life like his brother had with his own children. But he thought by not being there, because he was on the road probably 80% of the time, all while they were growing up, he said that his brother was always home every night. He went to every baseball game, every football game. He was there for his kids. And so he said if he could trade it all in, he would have given up the executive position as opposed to his brother, as opposed to the way his brother was living, because his brother was just a blue collar worker, but his brother had so much love from his family and his grandchildren that he had nothing. He was literally alone. And so I say all that to say that they were at opposite ends of the spectrum, but yet you had one that was very successful financially, but very miserable as far as on a human level. And then you had one that didn't have very much money, but yet he was rich in love from his wife and his children. And also the CEO I think he had been divorced as well. So it's just my 2 cents.
Okay, and and that's interesting. I'm going to comment on that, but I just want to read some of the comments in the chat. Eric Green says, "Waiting for that time, for that right time. Hope it didn't pass me by yet." Crazy Lady says, "My brother had a lot of talents where I seem not to have." Eric says again, "Waiting for that right moment to shine. I have bigger expectations to meet yet. Found my calling, just waiting for that moment. If it hasn't passed me up yet." Crazy Lady, I'm sorry, Shy Lady, is interesting that you bring up the fact of the auto mechanic versus the CEO. When I first moved out here to California, I worked in entertainment. I was in all aspects of it. And one of the jobs that I had was being a business manager. And, to a lot of well-known, high powerful, powerful people. And, I'm paying their bills. I'm managing their money. I'm, doing all this stuff. And, or when I was in casting and I'm, going to the set, or I'm going over someone's house or whatever. And I see that these people have all this money, and you look at their kids. And I've been in the room where a kid would come in and say, "Hey, I'm having a football game today, or tomorrow I'm having a play, whatever." And they're either just brushed off, or the parent says they can't do it. And to see the look on these kids' faces, and these are these kids who have everything. I mean, they have everything. And, you go into their house and just, you're just amazed. You're like, wow, whatever. And I thought that was sad. But then again, I look at my childhood, and even though I had 2 working parents, my mother and father were at every school play. They were at every rehearsal. They went to every parent teacher, meeting, whatever. And I always said that I would do that for my son. And I was at when he was in school, before he was homeschooled, I was at every school play, sitting right in the front row. Sometimes I had to sit there for like an hour or 2 to make sure I was in the front row, because I said I will always be in the front row for you, where you can see me. And I was. I went to every soccer game where half the time he wasn't even paying attention while he's out there on the field, but I was there. And it does make a difference too when that you show up. So again, I go back to, can your past be your fuel for the future? So all these kids who grew up in households where they had everything handed to them, they don't have to pay for rent. They don't have to, worry about, having a hoopty, for their first car, because their parents are able to buy them, BMWs and whatever. So again, can that person who did not have much end up being the person who actually does have the most, and how they behave when they get to adulthood? So I hope I didn't go on too much of a rant. I just want to go through. Okay, Eric says my mom was the one. My mom was the one dad. My mom was the one dad busy in his career. Okay, so your mother was the one. Okay, Shy Lady says to every parent that supports their children activities and dreams. Crazy Lady says I would have to say my upbringing had a major impact on who I am. Eric says I wish kick out at 16. I think you're saying I was kicked out at 16 when your mom died. Is that what you're trying to say, Eric? I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but okay, yes, okay. So you were kicked out at 16. So yeah, so I'll pass the mic to Bahram. And again, if anyone wants to come on, if you're welcome to come up, if you'd like, the only requirement is everyone is respectful. And Bahram, before you start, I just want to read what Ann Perkins says. Eric says he fed to the wolves. Ann Perkins says, my parents always worked hard, never missing work while I was growing up, and they did the best to give us what we wanted. I'm the youngest of three, but I am the most responsible. I work the hardest and the most, never asked for help on anything, where my sister and brother are always borrowing money and using my mom as a free babysitter any and every time they need her because she doesn't work and won't say no, and they have trouble sticking to a job. Wow. Okay. Bahram, you have the mic.
Yeah, in regards to what you were saying about a kid that's maybe spoilt and has been handed everything throughout their childhood, that would say to me that maybe they would end up feeling privileged in later life and not try so hard, and maybe have a lesser life than maybe a kid that didn't get much as a kid and worked hard, maybe got a job when they were 13, 14, delivering papers or milk or whatever, and valued having a penny in their pocket, and really saved hard to get that football or the new phone or whatever they wanted. That they would value those things and look after them and try hard. It would probably promote determinism for them, try and get the best job that they could. Again, it's subjective because there will be exceptions to the rule. Maybe some kids that have, been in a privileged childhood and has been handed things and have had plenty of money. Maybe they've took advantage of that and it stood them in good stead and it's given them a lift and they've took advantage of it and got a good job and carried on that kind of way. But I think these traits and things, there are a commonality, and it is kind of you can there is a gift that these people have if they're psychologists. I don't know what profession you would call them, but you can actually sit down and have a conversation with someone and judge them by what problems they have in their life today, whether they're 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, whatever. You could probably guess what kind of childhood they have, because I've seen it happen. Like I said, when I listened to that philosopher for 2 years, he had a show once a month, I think, where he did call-ins, and it would be like some of these people would call in and the podcast would last a 3-hour conversation over Skype. And they were really, it was like Jerry Springer type stuff, but only more in depth and more into it, where he would, that someone would phone in saying that I'm having problems in my relationship. My husband doesn't want this, or I want this, and he doesn't. And the guy, Stefan Molyneux, that I listened to, the philosopher, he would take them back. Like within a few questions, he would say, "What was your mother like?" Just a simple question like that. And they would open up about their mother and father and what kind of relationship. And then by the end of the conversation, they would be in tears and they would realize, what that's done to them, their childhood has made them that type of person. And again, I'll just say it again, like, I'm no expert on what does this and what does that. I'm just, trying to remember things. And I would say that being a spoilt rotten or a spoilt brat, as we say, would breed complacency, and the hard work wouldn't be there as much as it would be in a household that wasn't so privileged.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to what Anne was saying. So I'm going to pass the mic to Shy Lady, and then Crazy Lady, I'll give the mic to you. But at what point do you cut your children off? So Anne says that, they're borrowing money from her mom, using her as a babysitter. At what point do you cut your children off? And do you, should you cut them off, or do you just keep supporting them, or is it a case by case basis? Does another sibling come in? Like, Anne, should you, say something to your siblings? And I don't know if you have or not, saying, stop using mom as an ATM. At what point do you cut your children off, if you cut them off? And Shiley, if you want to respond to that, or anything that anyone else has said, or what Bahram has said.
I think that it's a case by case basis, and it's also depending on the person. Like, if they're self destruct, not managing their money right. And I know of a parent who actually did that. The kid was spoiled in their 30s, and he just had a problem with managing his money. He'd rather go buy the latest pair of Jordans, for 200. Just a lot of mismanagement. And finally, the parent said, "Look, I'm not gonna support you anymore because you can't pay your rent." And the person actually became homeless, and went back and told the dad that was tough love that I needed, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because having to live, I don't know how long he lived in a homeless shelter, but he said having to go through that experience, he has never asked for any money from him or mismanaged his money because he had nowhere else to go. And so, sometimes you got to do tough love, and sometimes you have a situation. I know I have some people in my family who rely on their parents a lot financially, but those people that I know of, they have issues with, like, bipolar, not taking their medication, which is a little bit different. But in the situation where the young man in his 30s, he just wasn't managing his money right. When that paycheck got there, he spent it on himself because he has no kids, no wife, early 30s, and he just needed tough love. And like I said, the homeless shelter was a wake up call, and it changed his life.
Okay, all right, Crazy Lady, you have the mic.
As has so much to say, like Barama said, I think, like, a lot of, like, what we go through as kids kind of, like, make up what we are as adults in a way. And some of us are able to, hopefully at a time, recognize, like, any destructive patterns and try to correct that pattern, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I would never cut my kids off, but my kids, they were, they're both were independent. They were just like, I don't know. My daughter today contacts me, goes, "Mom, can I have $50?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I have to wait till Ross gets paid, but yeah, But do I feel bad for sending her that money? No, because she does live on her own, and she's responsible. But, like, if I knew it was for, like, I don't know, a self-destructive behavior, like for, like, drugs or something, I'd be like, hell no, I'm not giving you money for that. So yeah.
Okay. Eric says, had a chance to go to private school, didn't like it, went back to public school. My brothers went to private school their whole time. Saba says, I think I would have preferred the culture that kept the family together. Eric says, Dad treats me like a baby at the age of 50. I had to cut him off from that. Saba says, not spoiled, but supportive of each other. Being homeless is easy, but being homeless with a dog is really difficult. And Eric says, that's a fact. I'm assuming you're replying to Saba. And Ann Perkins says, let me use my sister as an example. She is worse than my brother. She will pop up at like 8 a.m., say, oh, I have something I need to do. Can you watch the boys for a little bit? And then she doesn't come back until 6:30, 7 p.m. To get them. No call, no hey, I'm going to be long. Absolutely horrible at communication. And Saba again says, certain personality types will perish if not given a little shove. And it's okay. You don't have to read my comments. I'm just a little bottom soda under pressure. I am reading the comments, Saba. I am reading them. And Crazy Lady says, but my dad was the one that said you are on your own. An adult, figure it out. You know, I do believe that, and I say this as a parent, and I say this as a child whose parents, you know, help me out. I believe that if you are taking advantage, or you're actively not looking for a job, or you're actively not trying to better yourself, then I think you should cut your kids off. You know, I mean that's just what I think. I think you should cut your kids off. But if your kids are doing something responsible, they're leading a responsible life, they're doing the best that they can, and they need help, I have no problem, you know, supporting your children, because you have some children who, again, they're 40 years old and they just won't leave. Welcome, Juju. You know, they just won't leave. You know, and they're pretty much going to be with you forever. You know, but then again, you have some parents now who, because of, you know, the economic situation that has been going on, you know, for the last 10 years or so, you have a lot of people who are now parents who are now moving back in with their children, you know. So I think the support does go both ways. But I do believe that there is a time that you should cut your children off. And Saba says, let's see, my mother constantly kept me out of the loop, and gaslit me and sabotaged me secretly and overtly. It was very chaotic transition into adulthood for me. And she did that because she wanted me to be dependent on her, and she wanted to be able to continue abusing me while I had no power. That's interesting, because another question, see, and Shy Lady says, I agree with you, Sala, on both instances. That's interesting, Saba, you know, that you say that, because now I come back to, and we talked about this in a couple other shows, and I know that I'm getting off topic. What about those parents who, you know, they tend to focus on this one sibling to be the one that they want to keep around? That, you know, they want you to, either they do it by, you know, oh, I'm not feeling well. Can you come over? You know, it's always something, but it's always directed to this one child, as opposed to passing it around to everyone. So, what do you all think about that? That those parents that want to keep their children around. And Bahram, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, there's some issue there. I can't remember what it's called. It's like detachment issues or something like that. That definitely happens as well. I don't know. I mean, favoritism, if that's what you were referring to, if it's just one of the siblings that the parents want to keep around, then, I mean, that's worse in my opinion. But yeah, it definitely happens. And again, that would say to me that there's the same type of thing that we've talked about with children that is unresolved in these parents, that they have had those things that have happened to them in younger life, or in younger life, that they have unresolved, and they are now using their kids as comfort. Yeah.
Okay, now Saba says it's because no one else wants to hang out with them. Crazy Lady says Scott stayed home up until Dad died, but he helped Dad a lot because Dad was not healthy. Eric says Dad won't let go of me. Didn't have the time when I was younger. Now does way too much. I'm sorry, I missed one of Saba's earlier. Let me go back up a little bit. Okay. Crazy Lady says, my mom has helped me. I make sure I pay her back every time. Okay. So, but Mariam, is it the favorite one, or is it the fact that one child, which is typically tends to be the youngest child, that the parent tries to hang on to?
You know what I was just thinking there? Maybe it's that there's guilt. Maybe there's guilt in the parents for maybe that they felt that they were harsh on a child, and that they're trying to make up for it. I really can't see it being an age thing, unless maybe the younger one. I mean, there's probably reasons for both older and younger, for the parent to choose. But I would say it would be more separation anxiety and detachment issues, along with the guilt. There could be some guilt from maybe how they've treated them when they were young, and they're trying to make up for it.
So do you think that, again, going back to how your childhood can enable your adulthood, do you think that because you're treating your children like this now as adults, that it's still going to mess you up and still, not let you as an adult meet the potential or the goals that you have for yourself, because your mom or dad are still hanging on to you and won't let you go?
Yeah, there will definitely be inner demons and things holding you back, and I mean that's maybe what we're getting at to when you mentioned that poll about the chronic illnesses that can set in. It's a lot for some people to deal with, and I can see a lot of men, maybe and even women, resorting to drink and drugs to kind of block out problems from a relationship, and certainly parents as well. We've seen it all too often. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Saba says it's because they're miserable people and they're lonely, and they think that they can manipulate their children into staying around to help them and keep them company. So I had to cut off my parent. Okay, Shy Lady, you want to you jump in?
No.
All right.
It's all interesting, and like I said, it's all it's all different depending on the family and the circumstances.
Okay. And I know a lot of the things that I'm saying, it is relative. So it is relative to your family and your situation, what have you. So, Crazy Lady, passing the mic to you. Is there anything you would like to say?
Yeah, I think because Scott's mom left my dad, and he chased her across the country, and me and my brother, we both why'd you do that, Dad? I mean, come on. I mean, my dad was not known for do that kind of behavior. And Dad told us at the time, which makes way more sense now than it did at the time he said it. He said, I want Scott to have the opportunity to having both parents in his life. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's cool that, you got a grip on something, and, but Scott, he stayed in the house because, Dad was sick, in his later years, and Scott stayed there, but Scott had a way easier life than me and Tony did, I mean, all the way around, which was a good thing, for Scott. But, I mean, I made me and Tony a little bit jealous. We're like, whoa,
Okay.
then,
All right. So, Crazy Lady, and you said that I'm trying to remember what people have told me in the past. Are you the one who said that your children are 10 years apart, or you're 10 years older than your sibling?
My children, I had my son first, and there's a 10-year span between those two. And there's a 17-year span between me and Scott. Scott's the youngest.
And, okay, so for you, and in terms of how you treated your children, do you think that you played favoritism because one was older, or because one was younger?
No, and it's funny that you asked me that, because my daughter, this is after Alex passed away. She said, Mom, she goes, you never made me feel like you loved Alex more than you loved me, or that you loved me more than you loved Alex. And I said, what? She goes, yeah. She goes, I always felt that you loved us equally. And I was like, okay, well, that's awesome, because I didn't want you guys to think that, I loved either one of you guys more than I loved the other one, because that would have been a fallacy.
Okay.
I used to my son, you're my most favoriteest son. He's like, I'm your only son, Mom. I'm like, see, you win by default.
Okay. So Eric says, Dad has a lot of guilt from kicking me out at 16. So this is my last question, and I don't know, it may end up going into something else, but can you guys define to me, and again, it's all relative. What do you consider a happy childhood? So, Bahram, you have the mic. What do you consider a happy childhood?
Oh, it's a tough one. Just feeling loved and not afraid, and I mean, happy is different from ideal, so I'll stick with happy because that's what you asked. But happy would just be, feeling loved and never scared, never afraid, feeling protected. Yeah, I'll leave it at that, I think.
Okay. All right. Shy Lady, what do you consider a happy childhood?
I consider a happy childhood a childhood that a kid can say, I had love. And there's some kids who grew up low income homes, and they can probably tell you they had the best childhood because their mom was there, or they had home cooked food. I've heard a lot of people say, I didn't know I was poor, but there was love. My mother was there for me. Or if they came from a single family home, they, tell you my mother was mother and father. They were there for me when I didn't have a dad. Or if you come from a home with both parents, if you have that love, both parents involved in that kid's life. And like I said, it's not so much about the money aspect. It's more about the love. It's more about the quality that you gave that kid, memories that kid will carry with them forever. That maybe you and your child went on some trip together. I know, like when my kids were younger, each one of them had a fifth grade camping trip that we went out in the woods. The whole fifth grade, it was like 200 kids, the whole fifth grade. And I went with I went with two of my kids, but one of my middle child, I did not go. My husband went with him instead. But my youngest child is a boy, and I wasn't able to stay in the cabin with him. And he hated the experience. He's not an outdoor person, but he always tell me, because I knew from my first child that the food was bad. So when I had brought lunch meats and deli meat and all that stuff and cheese and all kind of snacks, he still remembered. He said, you know what, Mom, I had a really bad time, an awful time. I hated it, but I'm so glad that you had that food, even though we didn't stay in the cabin together. I'm so glad you brought the food, and when we were together, you made me laugh, and we had a good time regardless. So just things like that, we can recall memories. And my kids can recall, because I was a stay-at-home mom a lot, they can recall all the music that we used to listen to in the car with CDs. We didn't listen to the radio a lot, but we would listen to a lot of CDs. All the Motown music that I grew up with, and the artists that I love that my parents introduced me, I introduced them to my kids. And my kids will tell me today, Mom, I am so glad that you introduced us to like Stevie Wonder, all the Jackson 5 music, or the Isley Brothers, and all these other groups. And a lot of the kids that they grew up with have never heard of the songs or even some of the artists, because I introduced them to that. And they told me that they're thankful for it. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, thank you, Crazy Lady. What do you think makes a happy childhood?
Love. That's like the biggest thing, like even though my dad didn't say it a lot and wasn't like a really touchy-feely person, we knew that he loved us, because, we just knew it. Um, But for the most part, I think I had a pretty good, happy childhood. I think I was very fortunate.
Okay. All right. Simon says my mother was jealous of my relationship with my sister, who was I must I'm just gonna who was told years younger than me. And so she decided to start lying to either of us about what the other thinks about the other. And she made my little sister hate me. And I didn't even realize this was going on until it was too late. And Eric says childhood was happy until mom died at 16. Okay, you're said 12. Okay, who was 12 years old. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. You know, I guess again, I keep using the word relative because like Shy Lady says, there are people who were poor who said they didn't know they were poor because they were, they had what they considered a happy childhood. And there are people who are rich as hell and they're miserable. They, resent their parents, because either their parents were never around or, thought that because, I can give you all this, therefore I don't need to be present. But whether you're a single parent, single mom, single dad, no matter what household you come from, I do believe that the main word in there is love. As long as you have love and attention, that your childhood should hopefully be a good one. And hopefully when you're an adult, some of the experiences or whatever, whether your childhood was not so nice or was absolutely great, hopefully whatever experiences you have can help us all move into an adulthood, that is a good one. And remember, your adulthood, no matter how old you are, it isn't over. It's not over until the day you die. So, even if you have that one day where, something happens and something's great, again, we all have time to improve ourselves. So on that note, I do want to say that this past Saturday, I had the opportunity. Bahram invited me to. He interviewed me for his show, and it was, in my opinion, a great interview. It is on video. I have posted it to my Podbean stream, so you guys can see it. So anybody's wondering what anybody looks like or whatever. But Bahram, if you want to come on and tell people a little bit about your show and where they can find it, you have the mic.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. First and foremost, I really enjoyed Saturday night. It was way better than my usual Saturday nights where I sit and play computer games or, I really long for these deep, productive conversations. I think there's nothing better in life. And that was definitely one of my favorite conversations that I've had. For anyone that wants to find my show, and you guys are all welcome to come on. If you want to pick a topic, whether it be a conspiracy, a true crime, a a political issue, normally that's what I do. I have someone on. We both research it from both ends. You research it, I go away research it, then we come together and we share our findings for the listeners. Usually my episodes are an hour and a half max, and it's just chatty. It's like Joe Rogan can make a career out of it in interviewing all these famous people. I don't see why not we can't do it with real people, people who are real and down to earth and things. So I love Solid Blue show. I'm really enjoying it. Even just the therapy of getting out some of your life experiences, just talking about things and having a laugh and a debate, and I think it's something that we all should do more of. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, and Safa says you mean unpaid people. And I will say, the conspiracy theory stuff, I'm not into. We weren't talking about that. We were just chatting about other things. But I must say that Bahram, it was just again putting a face to a voice, whatever. But it was a really good chat, and I hope you guys check it out. And Bahram, I don't know if you posted it to your Podbean, but it is posted to his BitChute, and I will put that in the chat so you guys can find it.
Yeah. No, I haven't paid. I'm going to start my own Podbean show. That's going to be coming in the next week or so. So once I pay for Podbean, I can then upload. I think they only give you 4 or 5 episodes worth free on Podbean. So
Right.
I think once I get Podbean up and running, I'll start uploading. I've got about 25 episodes on BitChute, and Rumble is video. And then audio, you can pretty much find me anywhere you want. If I'm not somewhere that you like to listen to podcasts, please reach out to me. But I'm mainly on Twitter and Instagram as well. I'd like to connect with a lot of people, people in the chat. I think it's great if we all, support each other social media wise and see what each other are promoting and things. So it's just Bahram U Pod everywhere, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, again, Bahram is on bitchute.com. I did put it into the chat, and the interview or the chat is also posted on my Podbean. I posted it yesterday. So again, it is video, so you guys can see us all in our imperfect glory. So everyone, again, thank you so much for joining. I will have a show tomorrow. Wednesday, I will be traveling. So hopefully I am traveling back to the Midwest where there's supposed to be a lot of snow. Hopefully I don't get stuck in any airports, whatever, but I will not have a show on Wednesday, but I will have a show on Thursday. So again, I will be here tomorrow. Will not have a show on Wednesday, but I am planning to have a show on Thursday. So again, my show does not work without you, and I thank you all so much for coming. Speak your truth, go where the wind takes you, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. And thank you, Feisty One and Frankie, for your Podbeans, and for everyone for liking the show, and everyone for putting in your comments in chat. Thank you. Everyone had a lot to say today. Bahram, thank you for towing the line for as long as you did until Shy Lady and Crazy Lady showed up. So thank you. And let's see. And Tulian, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Feisty One, Frankie. Let's see, Saba, Michael Key was here. I can't remember everyone else, but thank you. Shy Lady, I hope I plan to have a safe trip, but again, it's the weather. I've been stuck in so many airports when it's come to snow and what have you. The last time I was in the airport for almost 14 hours, but I just want to be able to get in before they close the airports, because Chicago's supposed to get a lot of snow on Wednesday, so we'll see. Thank you. Thank you, Saba, for loving the music. It's called Crazy. I will send you the link. Okay, y'all, we're wrapping it up. Hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.